Hi all, this is Allmighty and welcome to this video. So in this video we have a game between Shakhriyar, Mamedyarov and Liren. So once again a game from the candidates 2018 and already round 12. So after this round only 2 more rounds to go and the situation is heating up. So after this round we will see a lot of new things that will happen to the standings, even some things that you wouldn't quite imagine, but okay, I will just leave that for after the games are finished. Why? So I'm really happy that this game actually ended up quite fast, because today I didn't plan to make a video. Also my throat hurts and everything, but yeah, I was really glad that this game specifically ended up so quickly, and the reason why I will tell you after the game. So on the one side, I just want to tell you some behind story. If you're new to all of this, Mamedyarov is half a point behind Caruana, so people will expect for him to actually go for a win in this game, because Caruana is playing against Karjakin, who is in full-on gung-ho mode, going for all the wins in the last couple of rounds. So yeah, Karjakin is going really crazy, and after all he has an advantage as we speak at the moment against Caruana in that game. And on the other hand we have Liren, who yeah, just unfortunately didn't manage to win the game yesterday against Alexander Grischuk. So I was really sad, because he had such a decisive advantage, and you can see how chess is actually a beautiful game. With such a complicated position, if you just look to a computer, it seems like, yeah, he has this move that makes him like plus 15 or plus 50, I don't know how much was it, but that's not the point, because after a couple of, okay, he missed this move, and after a couple of moves, Grischuk had a move that would actually equalize the position. So this can happen to everybody, and I hope Liren doesn't beat himself about it too much, because he is a good player and it can just happen to everybody. I mean, Garry Kasparov had a bit of a mean tweet about that, yeah, saying that now he is relieved, because he was also in a situation where he had a decisive advantage, and just with one move he played, his opponent was able to equalize position, and that's just the beauty of chess. I mean, it can happen. So without further ado, let me just show you the game. We have d4 knight to f6. Yeah, a very common setup for these two players: c4 e6, knight to f3 and d5. And now we have knight to c3 and c5. So the Semi-Tarrasch defense, I think we already saw it on this tournament, but I also covered it in a couple of games of Capablanca. After all, Siegbert Tarrasch played in that era when Capablanca was alive. And it's really good to see that people still play this opening after all this time. C takes on d5, knight takes on d5 and e4. Knight on c3, b takes on c3, c takes on d4, c takes on d4, bishop to b4, bishop to d2. And I just quickly went through all these moves, because after 10 moves we just have a lot of exchanges. Nothing much has happened, so both of the players just yeah, got rid of a lot of material here, and we can see that white is in a little bit of advantage, having the central pawns, developed knight and the queen on d2, but nothing decisive. So we have castles from black and bishop to c4. So yeah, after all of these exchanges, now there were actually two kinds of plans for white. You could have put the rook to c1, immediately putting him on the open c file and saying, yeah, this is mine and I want to plan something to do on the queen side, but I guess Mamedyarov went bishop to c4, that maybe at some moment he can push d5. So we have knight to d7 with a clear idea. Since the pawn is on e6, he will play b6 and bishop to b7, so this knight can also come to f6. So a pretty standard motif. We have castles and b6. After this, rook a to d1, bishop to b7 and rook from f to e1. So if you want to learn how to play by the chess principles in the openings, Mamedyarov is a guy for you. So just developing, putting all the pieces where they should be, and having a plan. So and when I'm looking at white positions at the moment, I would assume that pushing of the d5 pawn, of the d pawn to d5 is a clear plan here, because after that you're creating a pass pawn, even though there are a lot of pieces on the board, and it could be viewed maybe as a bit of not an isolated pawn, because he will be free to roam to the d8 square. But yeah, the problem is there are a lot of pieces still there, so you have to prepare it properly. we have rook to c8. Since Mamedyarov didn't want to occupy the c file, Ding does it. Bishop to b3, the bishop was attacked, and rook to e8. So black also finishes the development, and h3 now. Knight to f6, twice attacking the pawn, and now queen to f4. Once again, a decision that kind of moves the queen from the d file. Still, d5 is a possibility, but now the queen is kind of going on the king side, maybe preparing something to go for the attack there. We had knight to h5, and now I would assume that Mamedyarov usually would play queen to g4, because after that you have knight to f6 and repeating of the moves, but for some reason he played knight to h2. So maybe he is not going for that draw after all. We will see. h6 and knight to e5. So with this move kind of just going away for a moment from that idea of pushing d5 and centralizing the knight, attacking this pawn. Also the bishop is on this diagonal. White is in a good position here. We have knight back to f6 and queen to f4, since the knight is no longer on h5, and black now needs to make a plan. What will he do? So currently the status of the king side and this pawns, it's kind of good, not the best, but nevertheless you still have to make some threats in order to, otherwise if you just defend yourselves you'll probably lose the game, or you cannot hope for anything more than a draw. So Ding played b5 here. So the idea is to at some point push a5 and create a pass pawn on the queen side. We have rook to e3, and Mamedyarov, instead of once again pushing d5, decides to shift the rook on this side of the board and use it in the attack. We have rook to c7. So the problem is, if you play rook to g3 right away, for black, knight to h5 isn't possible to actually fork the rook and the queen and the rook, because there is queen to f7. This pawn is undefended, and that is the idea of the rook c7 move. And now we have something interesting, because knight to d3 is played with a clear idea putting it to c5 and rook to c3. And this immediately reminded me of that game I covered between Frank Marshall and Jose Raul Capablanca, where they also played the Semi-Tarrasch defense. And in this position, Marshall had a bishop on d3 and he moved it back to b1, and Capablanca won that game. After a couple of exchanges he won the pawn. But let's see, will the same thing happen here? We have knight to c5 and rook captures on e3, queen captures on e3. The rook from the c file kind of did his duty here, since he captured the very important rook, which white planned to use in the attack on the king side. We have now bishop to c6, bishop was attacked, and rook to c1. So once again, just disregarding the idea of pushing d5. So I was really hoping to see some pile up on the d file or something from Mamedyarov, but I guess he has some other plans. The c file is open, so this move is also good. But we have queen to b6. Now Ding realizes that there is no more attacks on the king side, and he is free to expand on the queen side. We have f3, and now, since the diagonal is problematic, rook to d8. Piling up on this pawn, the queen needs to be defended, so king to f2. And now a5. Since d5 wasn't pushed, now black is free to push the pawns on the queen side. And we have g4 now. So this isn't a move from a guy who actually wants to draw a game. This is a move from a guy who wants to win the game, wants to create some chances on the king side and go for it. If you would really want to play a move that actually kind of goes for a draw, a3 is a possibility, or even instead of g4 there is knight to e6. Attacking the rook, you have f takes on e6 and bishop to e6. King moves to f8, for example, and d5. And after the queens are exchanged, black can go for the exchanges on d5, and then you have a rook endgame, which is essentially drawn. So this is something that white could have gone for, but Mamedyarov decided that he doesn't want to go for a draw in this game. So g4 was pushed, and now a4, attacking the bishop. Bishop to c2, and now knight to d7. You want to exchange this knight, which is kind of weak, kind of strong, so definitely want to get rid of him. We have bishop to d3, and now knight to c5 and rook to c5. And now this is problematic, because the rook has gone away from the first rank, kind of not really sure, probably forcing himself on the b pawn, and also preparing in some variations d5, even though it's not that clear how he will do it. but now this has a clear now Dink has a clear option to push b4. We have bishop to c4 preventing b3 kinda, and bishop to d7, so moving the bishop away, and now g5 wants to open up the king side. So if you play h5 now, white plays g6, and yeah, this king side gets messed up really quickly. If f takes, you have a weak e6 pawn, otherwise the h pawn is attacked. Now white will also have some chances. So Dink decided to capture on g5. We have queen captures on g5, and now bishop to e8. Once again, moving the bishop closer to the defense, and yeah, releasing this rook to attack on the d file. Now we have queen to e7, rook cannot capture on d4 because the bishop is attacked, but on the other hand, you can just push b3. And after a takes on b3, you don't take on b3 because bishop captures, rather you push a3. A very common motif in the pawn's endgame, because you want to move this pawn away from the path of this pawn so that he can freely push to be a queen. After this b4, now this bishop is attacking on a2, but rook to a8 is played. And after all of this, finally Mamedyarov decided to push d5, but I'm afraid now it's too late, because Dink just pushes a2, and he knows he doesn't have to be afraid of this, because bishop captures on a2 and rook captures on a2 is with check, and then he can just handle the problems he has here with this pawn. So in this position, actually Mamedyarov didn't capture on a2, he went for a more, let's say, active line, but a worse line, because after this queen got out, and now Dink has two queens on the board. And if Mamedyarov doesn't have a checkmate in hand, and I don't think this is enough pieces for him, then yeah, just won't be enough, because also queen can come on h6. We have e takes on f7, bishop takes on f7, and after this move, both of the players reach time control, and yeah, now Dink Liren is in a different position, because yesterday against Grischuk, he played the last 10 moves, I think, under a minute or under 2 minutes, so under grave pressure, and now he has additional 50 minutes after 40th move to actually think how he can win this game. So after this, we had bishop to f7 check, king to h7, queen to h4 check. The rook couldn't give a check because he is pinned. Now simple queen to h6, and rook to h5 isn't a problem, because yeah, you can give up one queen because you have the other, but now we have also queen to a7 check, giving a check and attacking this bishop, which will fall in the next move. And after this move, actually Mamedyarov resigned the game. So I'm just so happy, man, because yeah, it was kind of hard with an aching throat to tell you all this, but first things first, Dink Liren definitely deserves this win. So he is the guy who, so he is the perfect guy if you look throughout of his whole tournament, how to progress from a person playing with these strong players at one moment at this tournament, being in positions that are drawn, but playing active chess, coming into a position where he needs to work on his execution, and finally winning that game where his execution is perfect. So I was really sad. I was kind of annoyed by some comments when people say, yeah, Dink Liren is just a guy who draws all the games. No, he's not. He is a guy who tries and sometimes doesn't have luck and doesn't win the game. That's just how it is, how he is. That is my opinion, and I firmly stand behind this opinion. So there are only 2 more rounds, so I'm not really sure that he can go and kind of mess up plans for the other guys. Now he will be half a point behind Caruana and Karjakin if he wins, so he is up there, but still, yeah, cannot really expect something more. Maybe in the next year, as I've previously mentioned in one of my videos. The guys who draw the games are guys like Mamedyarov, so not really showing any game, just going for the draw. I mean, I said my piece yesterday in that game with Wesley, so if you want you can check that out. But I'm really glad for Dink that he won his game, because he truly deserves it, especially after that not being able to win yesterday's game against Grischuk. I'm really happy for him, I will say once again, and I will just leave you on that note. And yeah, I would like to thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time.